Game night is supposed to be fun until someone pulls out Root. Suddenly, your friend becomes a warlord, your sister leads a resistance movement, and you turn into the guy with the backpack and a raccoon mask who's looting through the trash. And somehow, this is all by design. Asymmetrical board games such as Root provide more than entertainment. They act as structured simulations of psychological processes like adaptation and identity, and also sociological concepts like inequality, social roles, and power dynamics. Understanding these parallels helps us to see how play can reflect social structures and why some systems feel harder to win than others. As a longtime gamer and a student of psychology and sociology, I enjoy studying how games are more than just recreation. They're reflections of our world. First, I'll define what makes a game asymmetrical. Second, I'll explore psychological themes like strategy, identity, adaptability. Third, I'll examine how these games simulate societal inequalities and other power struggles. So let's begin by breaking down what makes an asymmetrical game from a normal or standard one. So this is what root looks like. Asymmetrical in asymmetrical games, players have unique starting positions, abilities, and sometimes even goals. These goals are structurally different, and they're reflective of imbalanced systems. Unlike symmetrical games like chess or Monopoly, where everyone begins exactly the same and does the exact same thing. In Root, each faction represents a fundamentally different approach to power. You have an authoritarian control, the Cats, Marquis de Cats. There's an insurgency group called the Woodland Alliance, an exploitation group called the Vagabond, and there's also a decaying empire that's trying to hold on to the last throes of their power, the Irie dynasty. According to Sakart, game mechanics are embedded with meaning, and in Root, those meanings include um, systemic imbalance and competition over scarce resources. Um, Players have to understand their own mechanics to win the game, obviously, but they also need to understand the mechanics of the other groups so that they can kind of um, counteract what might be going on. This creates what the game designer Cole Worley calls systems thinking, where success depends on adapting to multiple feedback loops and actor behaviors. This strategy, uh, this complexity leads us into the psychological realm. How our brains respond to things like roles, identity, inequality, and learning while we play. Um, Research shows that adapting to novel rule sets in a game promotes executive functioning and creative problem solving. So learn new rules, learn a new way to think. Players who switch factions, play different factions at different times, they practice what's called metacognition or thinking about thinking. Also, immersing yourself in another's rule sets can build perspective taking, especially in narrative or role-based games. And in Root, identifying with insurgents or marginalized factions can evoke empathy for people in underdog positions in society. Social psychologists like Goffman argue that roles, even playful ones, can affect behavior and self-concept. So when you're playing a game that has maybe a role that hasn't quite the same privilege as another, you can see people's alignment towards that real world identity change over time. Also, what Chicks in My Hail talks about in flow state, because there is this asymmetrical aspect, it increases complexity, and complexity helps with flow state, where that's where challenge meets skill. More complex roles, longer term engagements and intrinsic motivations, especially when they allow creativity. Um, if individual psychology explains how we experience games, sociology explains how the game models our society. Just like in society, people are assigned with roles, embedded scripts, expectations. In Root, the cats begin in control, like the elites, while the woodland begins underground, like the grassroots movement. There's a lot of conflict theory from Karl Marx that says that power struggles come from fighting over limited resources. Dominant factions are They're trying to fight off instability and keep the status quo, whereas an insurgent faction is trying to gain power from unrest. And political systems, we often see temporary alliances to balance the board. These small, short-term coalitions reflect Durkheim's concept of organic solidarity, where interdependence, not equality, stabilizes systems. Um, the cute woodland art that you see is a mask of a deeper commentary on war, occupation, rebellion. This aligns with Barthes' notion that even toys are mythologies, systems of cultural meaning. So, what can we take away from these complex systems hidden inside of our games? We've explored how asymmetrical games like Root operate on distinct systems of rules and roles. Psychologically, they build perspective taking, adaptability, and self reflection. And then sociologically, they reflect the inequalities and power struggles found in our real lives. So the next time you sit down to play a game like Root, don't just ask how to win, ask what it's teaching you about the world we live in.